A scientist wearing thick-lensed glasses and a black t-shirt with a UFO and the words "I want to believe" on it puts both hands over the headphones he's wearing. His eyes open wide. He can't believe what's being picked up by the array of radio telescopes outside the window. He rips his headphones off and runs to the lab where the rest of his colleagues are gathered. "You guys really need to hear this," he pants as he bursts into the room. The scientist turns on the speakers, and they all listen. The sound is not natural. Alien contact has been made. The scientists at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, also known as SETI, scramble to follow protocol. Now that they've identified an alien signal, what they do next will determine the fate of the planet. There are procedures in place to ensure contact has actually been made, and the signal is not just a fluke, but the steps that follow are only known to the people who have the highest security clearance in the country. 1 minute after first contact. The signal is double-checked by everyone at the observatory to make sure it's not coming from a human-made object or the result of a natural phenomenon. The scientists try to disprove that the signal is alien in origin, but can't. 2 minutes after first contact. The scientists at SETI reach out to their colleagues around the world by phone and over the internet. They tell them exactly what frequency to listen in on and where to point their telescopes in the sky. Everyone holds their breath as scientists across the planet try and corroborate the results. 3 minutes after first contact. Time slowly goes by as the SETI scientists who first found the signal try pointing other devices at the sky and get further readings. They can't believe the data that's coming in. There is something there, really big, and they've ruled out it's an asteroid or a comet, as the object is not giving off enough light, and the signal keeps repeating itself. 4 minutes after first contact. Results start coming in from around the world. Europe confirms that there is something anomalous in that part of the sky. Stations in South America, Africa, and Russia also confirm the signal is coming from something very large, headed directly towards Earth. The rest of the planet is facing away from this part of the sky, but as Earth rotates, they'll be able to confirm the alien presence as well. 5 minutes after first contact. The signal has been confirmed independently from multiple sources. Luckily for the scientists at SETI, they had friends at NASA who were able to turn the Hubble telescope directly at the unidentified approaching object. The thrusters on the side of the Hubble fire, repositioning the satellite. The scientists at NASA and SETI look at their monitors as the blurry image comes into focus. What they see shocks them. Everyone stops what they're doing and stares silently at the monitor. For the first time in history, humans are seeing an alien spacecraft heading toward Earth. 6 minutes after first contact. No one can move. No one can think. The ramifications of the discovery of extraterrestrial life are overwhelming. Suddenly, there's a loud pop. One of the scientists stands in the doorway. She has a bottle of champagne in her hands. Bubbles run down the side. "Congratulations, everyone. We did it," she says. The scientists look at each other and let out a cheer. 7 minutes after first contact. Scientists at SETI and NASA spring into action. "We need to alert the president," someone yells. "And the Secretary of Defense," shouts another. They pick up the red phone sitting on a desk and dial a number that's only supposed to be used in emergency situations. The phone rings. 8 minutes after first contact. The Secretary of Defense picks up the phone. "I'm busy right now, what is it?" a gruff voice says on the other line. "Sir?" one of the scientists stammers. We found something." "What are you talking about?" the Secretary of Defense asks, sounding a little annoyed. "Aliens, sir. There are aliens headed toward Earth," replies the scientist. "Whoever gave you this number is going to be arrested and put in jail for a very long time. You do not prank call the Secretary of Defense. The FBI will be at your door within the hour. Goodbye." He slams down the phone. The line goes dead. 9 minutes after first contact. The scientist stands motionless with the phone to his ear. There's nothing coming through but the sound of dial tone. As he puts the phone back in its cradle, he whispers, "The Secretary of Defense didn't believe me." Everyone at SETI looks at him in disbelief. A few seconds go by. The light on the emergency phone begins to blink. The scientist slowly reaches out his hand and picks up the phone. He places it next to his ear. "Why didn't you tell me there was an alien invasion knocking on our door?" the Secretary of Defense screams. "Get your team to DC immediately. We're putting the first contact protocol into place. Do not tell anyone else about what you found." The line goes dead once again. 10 minutes after first contact. Protocol dictates that no response to the signal should be sent back to the aliens before further information can be gathered. It's clear that the alien ship is headed straight toward Earth, but we still don't know if the aliens are peaceful or come with hostile intentions. The Secretary of Defense informs NASA to keep an eye on the ship and keep him updated if anything changes. He's about to meet with the president and other military officials. 15 minutes after first contact. The chiefs of staff and the President of the United States sit around a table deep in an underground bunker. The alien ship will reach our atmosphere in a matter of minutes. At this point, the only people who know about the aliens are the scientists at SETI, the colleagues they reached out to, and the US government. But this won't be the case for long. The US needs to figure out a game plan before reaching out to its allies. Luckily, there's a top-secret contingency plan in place for first contact with aliens. The president and the cabinet conclude that they'll try reaching out to the aliens before alerting the world of their presence. The only problem is the government has no idea how to make contact with a highly advanced alien race. It does not seem that the alien ship is hostile, but they need to be sure. The government knows chaos will break out as soon as the word gets out about the aliens. Before that happens, they need to know as much about the visitors as possible. The president orders NASA to start transmitting to the alien craft. Most of the transmissions are number-based, as math is considered the language of the universe. Binary code seems like a good place to start. So NASA sends a signal containing a repeating series of pulses toward the alien ship. There's no response. The vessel just keeps flying toward Earth. 20 minutes after first contact, there's been no response from the alien ship. It's likely that almost every government around the world now knows the aliens exist, as anyone said he reached out to earlier when they first discovered the signal has now contacted their respective officials. The United States reaches out to its NATO allies and informs them of their decision. It's time to start mobilizing defense forces just in case the aliens attack the planet. We don't want to provoke the aliens or inadvertently threaten them, so all military branches are kept on standby once they're in position. However, at a moment's notice, every NATO military force can be launched at the incoming alien ship with swift speed and deadly force. But it's made absolutely clear to everyone that the last thing the human species wants is to provoke a technologically advanced alien species that may be coming in peace. 25 minutes after first contact, all NATO forces have been briefed, and troops are deployed to New Mexico as the alien ship seems to be headed for the array that first picked up the mysterious signal. The United States reaches out to the other powers around the world. China and Russia are brought up to speed. It's not that the US is allying with these countries, but they want to make sure everyone knows that the unidentified object entering Earth's atmosphere is alien in nature and not a new technology created by the United States or their allies. The last thing humans need is an accidental war breaking out because someone thinks they're being spied on by a high-tech vessel and opens fire on the alien craft. To prevent this scenario from unfolding, the United States shares their data on the alien ship but keeps their tactical plan a secret. Unfortunately, what is about to happen next will cause people around the world to start panicking. 30 minutes after first contact, the alien ship is about to enter the Earth's atmosphere. The government can no longer keep this secret from the people. In preparation for what's to come, the Secretary of Defense informs police departments across the country to put every officer they have on duty. They must be prepared to stop the looting, the rioting, and the chaos that's about to break out. Unfortunately, this contingency plan needs to be in place because analysts have concluded that alien contact will lead to mass hysteria among the populace. Every law enforcement officer, military personnel, and everyone in the reserves are briefed by their commander before the president addresses the nation and informs them of what's happening. The public should hear it from him before the media starts inflating the situation to boost their viewership. The president broadcasts on every radio and television station. The video is live streamed on internet websites. He reads from a pre-written script. Although he tries to remain calm, there's a sense of urgency in his voice. Everything is about to change forever. Other leaders from around the world also address their citizens. Many people can't believe an alien ship is about to enter Earth's orbit, but others begin to panic and take drastic actions. Even with law enforcement out on the streets, there is too much confusion and panic. 45 minutes after first contact, a lockdown is put into place. Everyone is asked to remain calm and stay in their homes. Many people listen to the president, lock their doors, and board up their windows. This isn't necessarily to protect themselves from the aliens, but from others of their own species. Those who don't adhere to the lockdown are rounded up by law enforcement or left to their own devices. Either way, the next phase of the first contact protocol is about to begin. The aliens are here. It's time to figure out exactly who they are and what they want. 60 minutes after first contact. There's been no response from the alien ship yet. This is not surprising since we've only tried a few types of communication. However, now that they're almost to Earth, there are some other options. The alien vessel passes the International Space Station. The astronauts on board relay whatever information they can gather about the spaceship back to Earth. However, since they're in orbit, they only get a passing glance at the alien craft as it enters the atmosphere. A fireball forms around the ship as the friction between the atmosphere and the high-tech alloys begin to heat up. The vessel stops 10,000 feet above the surface of the Earth. The United States sends a reconnaissance plane to gather information about the vessel. The aircraft is not armed because we definitely don't want to make the advanced alien ship think it's under attack. Troops are deployed underneath where the UFO is floating. They gather any debris that might have come off upon entry through our atmosphere and bring it back to the research facilities for analysis. The first contact plan hinges on humans gathering as much data as possible about our visitors to best be ready for whatever's about to come next. 90 minutes after first contact. It's now clear that all the nations around the world need to work together to uncover the intentions of the aliens. Information flows freely between countries, regardless of prior political differences. The United Nations serves as a hub for the exchange and sharing of data. New ways to make contact are implemented. Using equipment such as bright lights, radio antennas, and devices that can transmit signals at different frequencies, scientists, linguists, and mathematicians try to figure out some way to communicate with the aliens. Large screens project images that convey peace and universal symbols like the shape of an atom in hopes that we'll get a response. There's no guarantee that any of these things will work, but we have to keep trying. Otherwise, humanity's first contact with aliens will fail. There are two scenarios that could unfold with the aliens at this point. So far, the protocol for first contact has been carried out as planned. When contact was initially made, multiple independent scientists were informed and confirmed the signal was in fact alien in origin. Then the government was contacted, and they took action around keeping the public calm while gathering as much information as possible on the aliens. Now, based on the response of the extraterrestrials, the final part of the plan can be implemented. 24 hours after a peaceful first contact. Even though the aliens have not responded, this is a win for the humans. It means they likely don't have any hostile intentions, and we haven't done anything to provoke them into violence. It's also possible that the extraterrestrials have been sending a return message, but we just haven't discovered or deciphered its meaning yet. We probably won't understand their response right away, but given time, our scientists will figure out its meaning and a dialogue can begin. The most likely scenario in this situation would be that the aliens would figure out a way to communicate with us long before we figure out a way to communicate with them. So they would end up solving the problem for us. The fact that they have traveled light years to get to our planet means they're vastly more advanced than we are. They'll likely have technologies we can't even dream of, one of which might be a universal translator or a way to dumb down their communication methods to our levels. 48 hours after a peaceful first contact, scientists begin to get results from the initial alien signal that they fed into computers. The patterns in the signal sent by the aliens are quantified and laid out in a way to find repetitions and meaning. The data deciphered by our computers is shared with other scientists worldwide as we look for a way to make sense of the codes hidden within the alien signal. Now that the alien ship has stopped moving, the military has set up a full perimeter around it. The streets are empty, shattered glass from storefronts line the sidewalks, abandoned cars sit lifelessly on the roads. People everywhere are glued to their screens as they watch the events of history unfold between humanity and the first intelligent life we've ever come into contact with. As time goes on, the only thing anyone's talking about is the aliens and their ship. Doomsday preppers assume the end has come and hunkered down in their bunkers. Many people have locked their doors and await further instructions from world leaders. Others are making their way to the location of the alien craft so they can see it with their own eyes. They're stopped miles from its location by military personnel blocking all routes that lead to the ship. The first contact protocol in place restricts civilian access to the aliens. Only government agencies, scientists, and military personnel are allowed to try and make contact with the aliens. They're trying to minimize the number of variables that might lead to confusion or hostilities. 72 hours after a peaceful first contact. The protocol remains the same. The government works with scientists and other nations to try and talk to the aliens. We still need to know why they're here and what they want. Since there has been no conflict, it does not seem like our new visitors want to wipe us off the face of the Earth. We've now advanced past the first contact protocols and are just trying to make sense of the situation. Under ideal circumstances, we would eventually find a way to communicate with the aliens. They would share their knowledge and technology. We would join a federation of galactic civilizations and explore the final frontiers of space. Humanity would spread across the stars in peaceful exploration and missions to bring other species to a thriving galactic community. Unfortunately, this probably isn't the way things would go if aliens ever did come to Earth. In a more likely scenario, things would go very differently and very badly for the human species during our first contact protocol, 24 hours after a hostile first contact. As we signal the alien ship to try and communicate with them, they vaporize our scientists and destroy all reconnaissance planes. Massive doors on the alien craft open, and an invasion fleet swarms down to Earth. It's now time to put the second part of the first contact contingency plan into place. We hoped we'd never have to do this during our first contact with aliens, but it's now become inevitable. Throughout human history, whenever a more advanced civilization came into contact with a less advanced one, there tended to be exploitation and war. The civilization with more state-of-the-art weapons and technology typically took whatever they wanted and conquered the lands of their adversaries. There's no reason to think that an advanced alien civilization would not do the same to the Earth. The United States launches its full military strength at the alien ship, but it's not enough. They plead with their allies for help. The British Royal Air Force and the combined strength of all the nations in the European Union attack the alien ship. Unfortunately, humanity's aircraft are no match for the aliens' superior weapons and shielding. We launch ballistic missiles from naval vessels and silos at the UFO. However, nuclear weapons are kept off the table for the time being. We don't want to destroy ourselves in the process of fighting off the alien threat. This has been the plan from the beginning if the aliens became hostile. Nuclear weapons are to be used as a last resort only, 48 hours after a hostile first contact. Unfortunately, not everyone on the planet can be counted on. There are certain countries that see the conflict between the United States, its allies, and their aliens as an opportunity. They launch invasion forces to conquer lands that they've had their eye on for some time. They're not allying with the aliens, and the aliens are not allying with the rogue humans, but each of them wants something and they're taking it. It might seem unbelievable that we'd need to consider the actions of other countries while the planet is being invaded by aliens, but it's something that must be considered even in this scenario. Humans are now fighting the aliens and each other, but the threat from space is the main focus for the United States and its allies. The hostile alien protocol dictates that the extraterrestrials must be stopped at all costs. Military officials look to scientists to help determine their next course of action. If the aliens seem to be using biotechnology or have minimal armor, a biological weapon might be effective against them. The US launches a non-explosive missile loaded with viruses, bacteria, and other deadly pathogens through the hull of the alien ship. The hope is that when the pathogens are released, they'll kill off any alien life forms that are trying to invade the Earth. If the extraterrestrials seem to be heavily reliant on technology, humans could drop EMP bombs onto the alien vessel. This would cause all the electronic functions to cease and the ship to fall out of the sky. 72 hours after a hostile first contact, it becomes clear that even our most deadly weapons aren't strong enough to stop the alien threat. There's only one thing left to do. If the human species can't have the planet, no one can. We launch a nuclear missile at the alien ship. It detonates. Everyone looking toward the sky is temporarily blinded. A cheer goes out across the country as we think we defeated the alien threat. But as the smoke and fire begins to subside, we see that the alien vessel is still there. The extraterrestrial technology is far more advanced than we could have possibly imagined. The final order is given. All nuclear missiles from around the world are launched at the UFO in hopes that we can destroy it. Our planet will become irradiated and will plunge into nuclear winter, but it's better than giving up our home to an alien species that wants to strip it of its resources and enslave humanity. It's important to note that there is no way to know exactly how well prepared we are for first contact with aliens until it happens. SETI and other science organizations have protocols in place for when they find an alien signal. We know the United States and other governments such as the United Kingdom and Japan have a first contact protocol, but these documents are classified and we can only extrapolate bits and pieces of what they would look like from what has been leaked. The scary part is that according to some of the greatest minds of science, making contact with an alien species is likely to be the end of humanity. We know that any extraterrestrials that can make it from their home world to Earth will likely be light years beyond us technologically. We also know that since the universe is a vast place, an alien craft that comes directly to Earth likely did so with a purpose. If they just wanted resources or to explore, there are plenty of resource-rich uninhabited worlds throughout the galaxy. If the aliens are aiming for Earth, it probably means that they want something from our planet, and they don't care whether humans are living on it or not. Stephen Hawking, one of the most brilliant minds that ever lived, strongly believed that humankind would likely be wiped out by any alien civilization that came to Earth. Hawking predicted that such advanced aliens would probably become nomads, looking to conquer and colonize whatever planets they could reach. So who knows what the limits would be. But not all scientists are as pessimistic as Stephen Hawking. Seth Shostak, a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute, believes that any hostile alien civilization that is cruising around the galaxy would likely have already picked up radio signals from Earth and come to conquer us. The fact that we've been left alone to develop on our own might indicate that any alien species exploring the galaxy right now just doesn't find us interesting enough to bother with. Or in an even more optimistic scenario, they're waiting until we're more technologically advanced before welcoming us into their space federation. The truth of the matter is we are not prepared for first contact with aliens. Since going to the moon, humanity has greatly reduced the amount of time and money we invest in space exploration. This means that we're probably better prepared back in the late 60s and 70s for alien contact than we are today. Our first contact protocols are likely outdated, and any aliens we come into contact with will either not bother with such a technologically inferior species as humans, or they'll just make us their pets.
UFOs and alien encounters have been reported since antiquity. Yet in the 1950s, an explosion of UFO sightings rocked the planet and continue to this day. Although they are often harmless events, there is a darker side to the UFO phenomenon: the alleged abduction or visitation of human beings by alien visitors. Hello and welcome to another special episode of the Infographics Show's Greatest Mysteries. Today we're taking a look at the alien abduction phenomenon with two of the most convincing cases of all time. Many abduction stories tell of aliens performing medical tests on their human test subjects, but some claim that the aliens are also interested in our mating habits, or perhaps require our help in creating a race of human-alien hybrids. Whatever the reasoning, some alien abductees report sexual encounters during their abduction event, and few are more well known than the first recorded abduction of the modern age. the abduction of Antonio Vilas Boas. In early October 1957, Boas began seeing strange, bright lights in the sky around his family's farm in rural Brazil. On October 5th, just before midnight, Boas spotted a bright white light in the sky as he opened his bedroom window to get some fresh air. Later that night, after sleeping for a bit, Boas awoke and discovered the same light in the exact same position. Yet, as he looked at it, the light suddenly began to move toward him at a frightening speed. Terrified, he slammed shut the window shutters and woke up his brother, and the two watched as the bright light shined through the closed shutters before leaving. The light reappeared 9 days later when Boas and his brother were out working in the fields at night to beat the daytime heat. This time, the light hovered about 300 feet above their head and moved from one end of the field to the other as the brothers approached to investigate. Suddenly, the light disappeared, as if having been turned off, though Boas suggested that the light may have simply lifted up and rushed away while he wasn't looking. The next night, working in the fields alone, a reddish light zoomed out of the sky towards Boas at incredible speed. Before he could decide what to do, it had already stopped directly above his head, and Boas could see a craft that looked like a large, elongated egg. 3 legs extended from underneath it as the craft began to descend, at which point a terrified Boas ran to his tractor. But upon reaching it, the tractor and its lights suddenly died. While Boas was fleeing for his house, a small figure suddenly grabbed his arm. According to Boas, the figure was dressed in a full body-length suit of some kind, with an elongated helmet and what appeared to be breathing tubes connected to its bodysuit. Shaking off the figure, Boas turned to run again but was surrounded by 3 figures who overpowered him. Boas was taken to a flexible metallic rolling ladder, which whirred him up and into the spacecraft. Once inside, he found himself in a small, brightly lit square room. The aliens grabbed Boas and held him in place while they undressed him, and despite his opposition, the aliens seemed to take care not to harm him or damage his clothing as they patiently removed it. All the while, the aliens communicated between themselves, with Boas describing the sounds as some kind of animalistic grunts. The sounds were so foreign to Boas that when interviewed later, he had a difficult time describing or recreating them. Once naked, the aliens applied a clear liquid to his body, likely a disinfectant, and took blood with a device from his chin that left small scars later noticed by doctors. At this point, Boas said he was left alone for about an hour until suddenly a nude female figure entered the room, described by Boas as human yet with features that, although beautiful, were not quite right. A device in the ceiling emitted a puff of smoke that made Boas nauseous initially, but he thought it acted as some sort of aphrodisiac. After engaging in intercourse with the alien woman, Boas was allowed to dress and return to his farm, but not before trying to secretly steal a small device from the ship as proof of his experience, which caused one of the aliens to react very violently. Boas's story could easily be dismissed as fantasy, if not for the incredible amount of detail and his great reluctance in his telling it. It took Dr. Olavo Tifontes, professor of medicine at the National School of Medicine in Brazil, to convince Boas to go public with his story, after which he did to a journalist and a member of the Brazilian military intelligence. Along with the incredible amount of detail Boas offered about the aliens, their wardrobe, and the craft itself, Boas was also found to be suffering from radiation poisoning, as he exhibited a plethora of other physical ailments for months after his experience. Was it an actual alien encounter, or was it the wild fantasy of a bored and possibly very lonely farmer? We'll let you decide as we move on to our second alien encounter. Made famous by the Hollywood film Fire in the Sky, the Travis Walton abduction story has become a hotbed of controversy. On November 5, 1975, Walton and 5 other loggers working in the Arizona wilderness piled into a truck for the drive home after a hard day's work. Minutes later, the crew spotted a bright light coming from behind a hill. Filled with curiosity, they drove closer until they could see a large silvery disc hovering just above a clearing. While the others stayed in the truck, a fascinated Walton leapt out and ran toward the disc, ignoring the shouts from the rest of his crew to get away and come back. As Walton approached the disc, it suddenly began to make sounds like a loud turbine and wobble from side to side, scaring Walton, who then began to back away. According to one of the men on Walton's crew, a beam of blue-green light shot out of the disc and struck Walton, sending him sprawling backwards. The terrified crew immediately put the truck into gear and hightailed it off the mountain and immediately called the police. Deputy Sheriff Chuck Ellison answered their call and came to meet the men, saying later that all of the men were distraught and 2 were in tears. Although skeptical of the story, he said if they were acting, they were awfully good at it. Within hours, a police search of the abduction site discovered nothing, and the next day an exhaustive search involving horses, helicopters, and jeeps still failed to discover anything. At this point, the police grew suspicious of the logging crew, believing the abduction story to be a cover for an accident or a murder. A polygraph test administered days later indicated that the men were not lying about their UFO sighting or that they had hurt Walton. Days later, a disoriented Walton called his brother-in-law, Grant Neff, from a public phone. Rushed to a hospital, Walton relayed a story of being examined by aliens similar to the popular Greys described by other abductees, and having an encounter with a strangely human-like male and female alien who would not answer his questions and at one point anesthetized him. A medical examination discovered a small puncture mark on his right arm consistent with a hypodermic injection, but it was nowhere near a vein. His urine also showed a lack of ketones, which, if Walton had indeed been without food as he insisted, and as his weight loss suggested, should have been present as his body began breaking down fats in order to survive. To this day, Walton's story remains the stuff of controversy, with Walton failing a polygraph test on the TV game show called The Moment of Truth. Skeptics believe the entire story was made up for publicity, and also because Walton and his crew were severely behind in their logging contract. Walton's alleged abduction allowed them to secure an extension from the Arizona government. However, Walton's crew remained adamant for decades after the incident that the entire story was true. Even the police who first responded to the original frantic telephone call for help remarked at how visibly shaken and distraught the men appeared to be that night. Are aliens real? And if so, do they really routinely abduct humans for research? Should we be concerned? And should our governments be doing more to try to protect us from this terrifying threat? It's ultimately easy to dismiss alien abduction stories as mere fantasies made up out of boredom, for attention, or to get oneself out of trouble. But sometimes the physical evidence can be perplexing and begs the question, just how did a 1950s Brazilian farmer working his fields in the remote countryside end up with radiation sickness, skin lesions, and a host of other perplexing physical ailments?
It's May 1951 and the Korean War has been raging for a year. The world is still weary from the ravages of World War II, and the United States is the only nation capable of leading a UN response to the attempts by the Communist North to seize South Korea and unify the peninsula by force. The conflict has set the stage for a defining age in human history, the Cold War, and soon a regiment of American soldiers will find that curious visitors from another world may also be interested in how this war plays out. The Americans are 60 miles north of Seoul. The jungle is thick and oppressively hot. The North Koreans have been pushed back from South Korea in a brilliant pincer movement carried out by US forces. Rather than risk being destroyed completely, North Korea forces quickly retreated into the north, as US-led NATO troops attempted to encircle them with an amphibious landing in the north. Despite these military successes, though, the troops are nervous. At every sunrise, every man on the front lines has one question on their lips. Have the Soviets joined the war? Have we finally started World War III? Private First Class Francis P. Wall and his platoon are providing security for an attachment of artillery, which is itself preparing to rain down fire on a village full of North Korean forces. Men watch the jungle around them cautiously, despite being a few miles from the official front. Raiding parties against the American artillery are not uncommon. The artillery is set to fire just before dawn, and the villagers below have all been warned of the impending attack and told to flee. As the hour approaches, the big guns begin opening up. Artillery shells whiz through the air, bursting just above the village and showering the North Korean troops below with deadly shrapnel. The thunderous booms echo across the hills as a dozen guns open up one by one and deliver death to the enemy. Suddenly, though, Private Wall and other men responsible for providing security for the artillery sees something in the hills above the village. It seems that the bombardment has attracted the attention of something none of the men will ever be able to explain. The light is dim at first, but quickly grows in brightness as it moves down the jungle hill. To the Americans, it appears like a floating jack-o'-lantern, emitting some kind of light from its body that is at first orange in color. To their shock, the light moves just over the village, even as the American artillery continues to pour fire into it. The air-bursting shells detonate all around it, and then the light does something incredible. In a move that defies all known physics, the light is able to rapidly move to the side of an exploding shell, avoiding being directly hit by the rounds. Even avoiding a direct hit, the object, which by now the men know must be some sort of craft, must have some sort of protective shielding, as it's still being showered by frag from the exploding artillery shells. Even if it is receiving any damage though, the Americans on the ground are unable to tell and simply watch in awe for almost an hour as the craft weathers the bombardment of the village. Then, the craft turns its sights on the Americans. With no warning, the craft turns in place and now moves directly toward the American position. The men are nervous. Nothing in their training has prepared them for this. Is it a secret Soviet craft, perhaps based on stolen Nazi technology? The speculation runs wild as the men prepare for what might be an attack on their position. Private Wall asks his company commander for permission to fire on the object as it approaches, using his M1 rifle loaded with armor-piercing rounds. His company commander agrees, and as the object approaches still bathed in orange light, Wall and his squad mates open up. Their fire is accurate and the craft comes under fire from several rifles. If the craft was employing some sort of protective shielding against the artillery shrapnel blast, it must have dropped it because the men are able to clearly hear the metallic sides of the craft ringing out from the sounds of their bullets striking it. As the men fire, a few of the armor-piercing rounds must have found their mark, piercing the strange craft. Suddenly, the craft goes wild. The lights begin flickering on and off erratically, and the craft makes crazy sporadic movements from side to side. At one point though, the craft remains floating in the air above the GIs. The lights go completely off, but then seems to flicker back to life. The Americans on the ground, worried that the craft is going to either explode or come crashing down on their heads. Then, the craft seems to regain its stability, and suddenly the mountain valley is filled with the unbearable sound of what seem to be dozens of diesel train locomotives starting up all at once. The craft begins pulsing bluish light and attacks the soldiers below. As the men watch helplessly, the craft sweeps a ray across the battlefield below it. The brightly colored ray seems to come in pulses that the men can only see when it sweeps directly over them. Like car headlights or a searchlight in the dark, the craft sweeps this ray across the ground below it, seeking out soldiers where they lay in their fighting positions. As it sweeps over each man, they're racked with a burning, tingling sensation all over their flesh. The company commander immediately shouts for his men to take shelter from their bunkers. Small dugouts reinforced with plywood and sandbags. The bunkers offer protection for their men from the artillery bombardments, and the soldiers dive below the ground to take shelter from the mysterious ray. From inside these bunkers, the soldiers are able to watch the craft through small peepholes. Some of them even start returning fire from small firing slits. The craft suddenly blasts the entire area with a bright light, turning night into day briefly. Perhaps frustrated by the men safely out of its grasp in their bunkers, the craft then pulses with light once more and without warning shoots off at a 45-degree angle. To the astonishment of Private Wall, the craft seems to fly off at impossible speed, quickly being lost to the starry night sky. Lingering in their bunkers, it's a few minutes before the men work up the courage to leave the safety they offer. The company commander quickly calls for a meeting, and to a man, the soldiers all agree on one thing. They aren't telling a soul about what they just experienced. While each day the company is expected to file a report on its activities for the day, the company commander agrees it's best to leave this one off the books for now, for fear that they'll all be thought of as crazy. At the time, there's no such thing as UFOs in the public consciousness, and while mysterious stories of World War II Foo Fighters circulate through the military, nobody has yet made the link between their appearances and otherworldly alien visitors. Better then to keep everyone's mouth shut so they don't end up locked up in the loony bin. However, a few days later, the men of the 25th Infantry Division, 27th Regiment, 2nd Battalion, Easy Company start to fall ill. They're nauseous, they have terrible headaches and diarrhea. So many of them are affected at once that the army has to cut a road through the jungle to send ambulances and evacuate many of them. When doctors examine them, they find the men have extremely high counts of white blood cells and seem to be suffering from dysentery. After the war, Private Wall would struggle with PTSD and drop from 180 pounds to 136. The weight loss would be permanent, and the private would struggle all his life with weight issues as he struggled to recover to his normal weight. An official explanation for the event was never given, and with no official report filed, an investigation was never conducted. Whatever the men saw that night in Korea, though, was not a one-time incident, as GIs all across the conflict would tell very similar stories. For years, the mysterious craft are thought to possibly be Soviet secret weapons, but when those weapons never materialized in Soviet arsenals, the men involved would be forced to look for more otherworldly explanations. As the Cold War came to an end, it was revealed that on the other side of the Iron Curtain, the Soviets were also encountering strange alien craft.
Some even allege that the Soviet military had been involved in a conflict with underwater alien beings. According to allegedly secret documents leaked by former Soviet intelligence officials turned whistleblowers, military divers encountered a strange being in a silvery diving suit with a bubble-like helmet. When they returned to the area later to try and capture it with a net, the divers were forcibly sent upwards toward the surface by an invisible force. Their quick ascension from 50 meters down gave many of the men the bends. However, others argue that UFO sightings in wartime in Korea or even during the Cold War were nothing more than simply the effects of severe stress on the human brain, with both sides acutely aware that a full-scale global war could erupt at any time. Plus, with the stress of normal combat, the mind may play tricks on some people, even creating outright hallucinations. Plus, as some have pointed out, the symptoms that Private Well described are similar to regular dysentery. Whatever the truth is, wartime UFO sightings are nothing new, and the Korean War is seen by many as the floodgate opening up to what would become a full-blown alien incursion of planet Earth. Perhaps this isn't as surprising as it might seem though. After all, this was just years after the United States developed a working nuclear weapon, propelling humanity into the atomic age. And shortly after, the world found itself in the grip of a potentially civilization-destroying Cold War. Could aliens have been interested in how this part of human history played out? If reports from Korea are true, the answer may be a very frightful yes. Mars, a cold, lifeless place, yet just a few meters beneath the surface, a secret underground base hums with activity. American astronauts walk the hallways of this secret base, talking and exchanging research notes with aliens from another planet. This might sound like the opening to a fantasy novel, but according to one of the most credible individuals in the world, it's our present-day reality. Dr. Haim Eshed is not a backwoods country bumpkin talking about strange lights in the sky and little green men putting probes where the sun doesn't shine. He's one of the most respected men in Israel and America both. A former general in the Israeli military, he's also the co-founder of Israel's space agency and considered a national hero for his efforts to launch Israel into the space age. More on that, he's a professor of aeronautics and astronautics and a member of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. As far as credentials go, short of being president, he can't get any better. And he has one message for the world, revealed in a shocking interview in early December 2020. Aliens are real and the American and Israeli governments are cooperating with them. According to Dr. Eshed, aliens representing a galactic federation of like-minded species have made contact with at least two governments on Earth, the Israeli and American governments. At this time, it's unknown if other governments are involved and that it's likely Israel's involvement is due to American cooperation, which would mean the other close U.S. allies such as Britain and France are also likely aware of the existence of these extraterrestrials. Don't worry, these aliens aren't here to eat your brains. Instead, they're curious about humanity and awaiting a time when humanity is mature enough to join their galactic federation of allied species who share the ultimate goal of understanding the universe. Well, admittedly, that's exactly what brain-eating space aliens would want you to believe. But according to Dr. Eshed, their intentions are so far peaceful. In fact, cooperation agreements have already been signed between the US and these aliens, resulting in a research laboratory on Mars itself where American astronauts work side by side with extraterrestrials. Current President Donald Trump, as of this writing, not only knows about the existence of these aliens, he nearly revealed their existence publicly but was warned not to due to concerns over mass hysteria. Surprisingly, if Dr. Eshed's claims are true, it's the one piece of advice Donald Trump seems to have listened to. So, wait, is this for real? Let's explore the reasons why this claim is likely a fabrication and why it might actually be real. As you'll soon see, Dr. Eshed is far from the only high-level, credible individual to have come out making a startlingly similar claim. First, let's investigate why this claim is likely false. Dr. Haim Eshed is certainly a credible witness as far as qualifications go, yet he is currently selling a book dedicated at least in part to his claims of extraterrestrial contact. That can't help but cast aspirations on his claim of space aliens. As the old saying goes, it can be hard to trust a man with a book to sell. In both the United States and Israel, though, there's another saying amongst the intelligence communities responsible for both protecting each nation's highest national secrets and discovering those of the enemies. And that saying is that aliens make great cover stories. A US CIA agent once famously said, "I love UFO stories because as long as people look up into the sky and see something weird and they're thinking alien spacecraft, they're not thinking secret US plane." This idea is pretty sound.
And the fact is that it now has been proven that many UFO sightings over the years have in fact been sightings of aircrafts such as the American F-117 stealth fighter, the B-2 stealth bomber, and specially modified Black Hawk helicopters used by Special Operations Forces, especially true when those aircraft are still in their secret design and testing phases and not quite yet public knowledge. The simple truth is that aliens make for a great cover story for secret government programs, and that leads us back to Dr. Haim Eshed. Dr. Eshed has a career in Israeli military, attaining the rank of general. He also helped found the Israeli space program, a vital element of the Israeli intelligence apparatus, as it was largely geared toward establishing a space-based military and surveillance infrastructure. For a country with as many enemies as Israel, a robust space capability is of the utmost importance. While Dr. Eshed may not have been directly employed by Israel's intelligence agencies, he was no doubt heavily in support of them in his duties with Israel's space agency. Given the extremely crafty nature of Israeli intelligence operations, amongst the most legendary in the world, it's not at all unbelievable that Dr. Haim Eshed is merely fulfilling one final task on behalf of the American and Israeli intelligence services: disseminating disinformation to act as a cover story for current and future secret programs. As he has himself stated publicly, he's 87 years old and no longer cares about his reputation. The claims of human-alien cooperation are also dubious at best. According to Dr. Eshed, American astronauts work side by side with aliens in a secret base on Mars, conducting research together. If an alien species is intelligent enough to cross the galaxy and get to us in a timely fashion, then what possible use are humans to them in conducting research? Even their calculators would be smarter than us. Having humans assist spacefaring aliens in research would be like inviting a wild chimpanzee into a research lab to help develop a COVID vaccine. Given humanity's behavior throughout 2020, both scenarios would likely involve equal amounts of poop throwing. But what if the claims are real? Well, there might be quite a lot of factors proving Dr. Eshed's story is actually true. First, we have Dr. Haim Eshed himself, a career military professional, co-founder of a space agency, respected academic, and no history of mental illness or delusions. He served with the Israeli space program for nearly 30 years, receiving the Israeli Defense Award 3 times, twice for technological inventions that remain classified to this day. The doctor is clearly intelligent and possesses a high amount of integrity. Nobody lasts as long as he has in high-security clearance work without impeccable integrity. In short, if anyone was gonna leak the news that aliens are real, then Dr. Eshed is quite literally the perfect, most trustworthy candidate to do so. The only possible way this announcement could have been more believable is if the claim was made by a serving head of state themselves in an official capacity. What we have here is one step short of the perfect witness, which makes it curious that his claims are so easily dismissed. Ask yourself the question, who would you believe if not a man of Dr. Eshed's qualifications? But Dr. Eshed isn't alone in his belief of extraterrestrials. In a 2014 interview with Jimmy Kimmel, former President Bill Clinton said that he wouldn't be surprised if aliens visited the Earth. However, he denied knowledge of actual aliens recovered from Roswell or being held in Area 51. He's hardly the only member of his administration with a belief in aliens, though, with John Podesta, President Clinton's former chief of staff, making his belief in visiting extraterrestrials very public. But much as his former boss, stopping short of confirming any knowledge in government involvement. Two of the most shocking claims of aliens visiting Earth, however, come from political leaders in Canada and Russia. In 1997, Kirsan Ilumzhinov, head of the Russian-controlled Republic of Kalmykia, said that he was shocked to discover a hovering UFO right outside his balcony. The aliens flew Ilumzhinov to space and showed him the truth about UFOs. His claims prompted a bit of political panic in Russia, with some questioning his fitness to remain in office, though curiously some of Russia's Duma members were concerned with the potential leaking of classified state secrets to alien beings, and asked for a direction on how to properly respond if approached by extraterrestrials. Perhaps even more shocking, though, might be the revelation of one of Canada's former defense ministers. Until today, the highest-ranked state official to reveal the potential existence of alien life on Earth. Serving from 1963 to 67 as a defense minister for America's polite top hat, Paul Hellyer shocked the world during a speech at the University of Calgary. Mr. Hellyer claims that aliens have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, and perhaps unsurprisingly don't seem particularly impressed with humanity. According to him, the aliens' chief critique of humanity is that we spend entirely too much time fighting each other, spend too much money on our militaries, and not enough on feeding the poor and helping sick people. According to Hellier, aliens even walk amongst us, with up to 80 different species visiting the Earth, and some looking so human that we don't even notice. The good news is that most of the aliens seem to be benevolent and concerned over our previous use of nuclear weapons and that we might use them again in the future. Generally concerned over humanity's future, the aliens are waiting for humanity to mature before sharing advanced technology with us. However, several species have outright hostile intentions that we need to be wary of, though he declined to share any specifics on those evil aliens. Both of our previous figures have been painted as crackpots in the media, but our next witness is a real American hero and one of the few men to ever set foot on another heavenly body, with man-made technology anyway. Astronaut Edgar D. Mitchell is famous for landing on the moon and helping save the lives of all aboard the Apollo 14 mission as it descended to the moon's surface. However, in recent years, he's also come out with claims that aliens are not just real, but actively involved in monitoring mankind. Unlike other leakers, Mitchell, however, stopped short of claiming close cooperation between aliens and world governments, and has never claimed to have met one himself. Instead, Mitchell claims that his experience in both the U.S. Air Force and NASA put him in contact with many individuals all telling the same story. UFOs have been closely monitoring humanity, and especially its nuclear weapons. In fact, he believes that their goal has been to avert a nuclear war between the US and Russia, or then the Soviet Union. Mitchell's claims aren't solitary either. Over the years, dozens of nuclear facility and nuclear missile silo security, maintenance, and launch personnel have come forward, all claiming to have witnessed UFOs over nuclear facilities, and at times even shutting down nuclear missiles. In fact, the writer and researcher of this episode, having been former military and with a high security clearance, can confirm multiple sightings of UFOs over a nuclear facility, though has to stress that these were true UFOs, as in unidentified flying objects, not necessarily of an alien origin, simply unknown. Something seems to be out there, but whether it's alien or not remains undecided. Certainly evidence is mounting, however, that somebody on Earth is flying craft with unusual flight characteristics, as shown in now multiple videos declassified by the US Navy of their aircraft in pursuit of UFOs. But if these craft are truly alien or not remains unknown, though perhaps Dr. Jaime Shed has had the answer all along. The true mystery, however, might be why a man with such impeccable credentials as Dr. Ashed is willing to risk his reputation on such outlandish claims. The date is late December 1980, and U.S. military forces have been invited to Britain on behalf of the Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. After the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan the year before, all of NATO is on edge, and U.S. troop presence in Europe has been increased as a precaution. The U.S. Air Force and the Royal Air Force both operate two air bases known as Woodbridge and Bentwaters, home to several squadrons of fighters, bombers, and, unknown to the public, a small stockpile of American nuclear weapons meant to be employed against the Soviet Union in case of war. Strange lights have been reported in the sky by both military and civilian personnel over the preceding few weeks, but nobody's paid much attention to them, being explained away as military aircraft or simple meteors. Deputy Base Commander Colonel Charles Halt, however, has been witness to these objects and is troubled by his or any of his staff's inability to explain their presence. He resolves to investigate the phenomenon if an opportunity ever presents itself. He would not have to wait long. On the night of December 26th, the U.S. Air Force Security Police noticed strange lights in the forest outside the small airbase. The lights seem to fluctuate as they move through the treetops, and the airmen fear that an aircraft has suffered some form of malfunction. They radio for permission to investigate the site, which is off-base and technically outside of their jurisdiction as American Security Police. Nonetheless, fearing a serious emergency with a military or civilian aircraft, the airmen are given permission. 4 security policemen thus set off into the forest to investigate, though one of them is convinced that there's been no crash, as he believes he saw the lights actually land safely on the forest floor. This security policeman, Staff Sergeant Bud Stevens, refuses to leave the base perimeter and investigate the site, terrified by what he believes he had seen. Airman First Class Cabinseg, Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston, and Airman First Class John Burrows thus drive into the forest alone. It's not long before they spot a bright, shining light coming through the trees. They attempt to follow it with their vehicle but are unable to due to the difficult terrain and are forced to proceed on foot. As they move closer to the mysterious light, though, the radios begin to malfunction, so Sergeant Peniston orders Airman Cabasang to remain by the vehicle where the radios are unaffected so he can relay back to Central Security Control if need be. The 2 airmen notice that animals on a nearby farm seem to be in a highly agitated state, further setting the men on edge as they continue forward through the thick brush. Radio comms, even back to Cabasang barely 100 meters away, completely fail, and Sergeant Peniston orders Airman Burroughs to head back to the tree line so he can maintain a radio link back to Cabasang. Burroughs, however, is so afraid that he refuses to leave Sergeant Peniston's company, and the two continue on together. Now just 50 meters away, the men get a look at the source of the light. It's a metallic object glowing brightly and causing the air to be charged with electricity. The men's hairs start to stand on end as they approach even closer, making out more details of the luminous object. Despite the light, the skin of the craft seems to be black and metallic, and is triangular in shape, measuring 3 meters in width and 2 in height, roughly the size of a tank. White light seems to be emitted from both the top and bottom, with flashing blue and red lights along the side of it. Sergeant Peniston uses a camera he's brought with him to snap photos of the object and notices that there seems to be no seams, rivets, or other signs of manufactured origin. It's as if the entire craft was made out of one solid piece of metal. Touching the object with his hand, he's surprised to find it warm, and as he slides his hand along the smooth metal, discovers a series of raised symbols etched along the left side. As he moves his hand along the symbols, though, something incredible happens. The craft emits a blinding white light, causing the men to stumble backwards. Sergeant Peniston is so afraid the craft is going to explode that he ducks for cover behind a thick oak tree. Suddenly, the craft is completely engulfed in white light and lifts up off the ground, quickly shooting through the trees and up into the night sky. The men immediately report back to base and are told they have misidentified some natural phenomenon. Peniston, however, has kept detailed notes of the entire encounter in his logbook, which he presents at the debriefing. The men are told simply to forget what they think they saw. The photos taken are confiscated and never seen again. Base Deputy Commander Colonel Charles Halt hears about the UFO when he returns to the base the following morning. He orders Airman Cabasang to report to his office and debriefs him personally. But with no further evidence, the case remains a curiosity and nothing more, until just 24 hours later. Colonel Halt is at a party attended by both British and American officers when he receives a call. The UFO is back. Halt wastes no time and immediately leaves the party, assembling a patrol to investigate the sighted craft once more and hopefully debunk it. Upon entering the forest, Halt and his men discover that other patrols have already arrived, but are experiencing difficulties with the electronics in their patrol vehicles and their radios. Nobody has seen the exact whereabouts of the craft, however, so Halt takes his team toward the original landing location from 2 nights ago. As they arrive, they spot a glowing red object moving through the forest ahead of them. Halt, who is carrying a mini tape recorder, begins making notes as he observes the craft.
There wasn't a pigmentation.
You just saw a light where? Wait, no, slow down. Where?
Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash right there, sir. There it is.
Hey, I see it too. What is it?
We don't know, sir.
So, can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. I'm going to switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again?
Yes, sir.
As the men investigate the light in the distance, they notice that the farm animals nearby, which had been going crazy, seem to have quieted down, as if something was terrifying them into silence. Undaunted, the men push on and run straight into a flashing red light directly ahead of them.
We just got the first night bird we've seen. We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead.
It's yellow.
I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been.
Yellow.
It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird.
To the left.
Yeah, definitely moving off.
Two lights. One light to the front,
Okay.
one light to the left.
Keep the flashlights off.
The men spot the light moving slowly toward them and incredibly splitting off what appears to be chunks of molten metal as the light moves. Undaunted, the American airmen move toward the light again.
Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. Can you want to do without lights? Let's do it carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye.
Colonel Halt and his men move toward the light, and to conserve tape, the colonel stops recording. The men push through the woods and cross a small creek, when incredibly, they spot not one, but multiple lights.
We passed the farmer's house and across into the next field. Now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash.
across the creek. And we're getting what kind of readings now? Getting 3 good clicks on the meter, and we're seeing strange lights in the sky.
As the men watch, they suddenly spot numerous lights, almost as if they've been lured into the midst of their own personal light show.
0315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. It's moving out fast.
This one on the right heading away too.
Yeah, we're both heading north. Hey, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
Incredibly, one of the craft seems to emit a beam of light that lights the ground a few dozen meters in front of the men. On the recording, the other men with Colonel Halt can be heard excitedly cursing and muttering in fear when the colonel stops the tape again. By now, he's had enough and believes he and his men may be in danger, so he orders them to return to the base. Incredibly, the lights continue to put on their light show, with one even flying over the air base and being spotted by the colonel and his men beaming a light down to an unspecified location on the base. Shortly after the incident, the British Ministry of Defense and the United States Office of Special Investigations conducted an investigation into the incident, declaring that there existed nothing of any notable concern that had occurred that night. Many, including Colonel Halt himself, believe the governments of the United States and Great Britain covered up the incident and suppressed much of the evidence, though the colonel's own recording was kept safe and released to the public in the 2000s. Much of the physical evidence, such as indentations at the landing site and radiation counts recorded by Colonel Halt and his team, would be explained away as being nothing more than rabbit burrows or normal background radiation spikes. However, if we're to believe Colonel Halt's version of the events, then this might be nothing more than disinformation meant to silence any discussion about the incident, or to at least ruin the credibility of the witnesses. In the end, the best evidence we have is the colonel's tape itself, and it's clear on the tape that whatever happened that night, a half-dozen American airmen and a deputy commander of an American airbase all believed that they were truly witnessing physical phenomenon taking place before their very eyes. Whether it was alien or not, or perhaps simply a mass delusion, we may never know. You've just settled down for the evening. The pizza you ordered is on its way, and your favorite alien-fighting duo, Rick and Morty, are about to come on the TV. Then suddenly you hear a beeping sound, and on the screen you see Emergency Broadcast. The beep stops and you hear the words, "We interrupt this program for an important message from the President." Wow, you think this could be exciting. The next shot is the President himself sitting at his office in the White House. "Dear fellow citizens," he says, "today I'm addressing you with news that could be world-changing. For what you're about to hear is without precedent. Today, the United States has made contact with aliens. This is gonna be big, like really big, bigger than you can imagine." Maybe some of you are looking forward to the day of this happening, and maybe some of you are dreading the day. However you feel, if you believe some scientists, it's only a matter of time before we are contacted by aliens. Some people believe in a kind of alien zoo theory, which means we're being watched over, but the super intelligent life form that's observing us has just not made contact. Maybe aliens don't want to interfere, and it's better for us to do things on our own way down here. That said, they are watching us as we pollute our planet. They've seen us wage wars and create weapons of mass destruction. They've stood by for a long time. But if some of those environmental scientists are right, maybe by 2050 human civilization will come to an end. With that in mind, perhaps those aliens up there in space kind of like us cuddly-wuddly humans and don't want us to self-destruct. Those guys regularly watch the infographic show, and they just adore Ed Sheeran. And they don't want to see doomsday, and so have had a chat with each other and agreed to make contact. The question is there any evidence for this? What would we do if they made contact? First of all, it's unlikely if aliens did make contact, they'd be fluent in one of our many languages. And then they just get the president on the phone and be like, "Hey, so we're a group of intergalactic aliens originating from the planet Karzion. We just called because we're a bit concerned about environmental degradation on Earth and the fact that you worship money above all things. We don't want to sound harsh, but with that and all the hostilities down there, we decided it's time to teach you a thing or two. We'll be down in a minute or two. Laters." That's a highly unlikely scenario, but since 2007, astronomers have been detecting mysterious radio waves coming from outer space. They didn't exactly know what they are, and some scientists suggest that it could be evidence of alien life. The pulses of these radio waves are short, like milliseconds short. That's why they're called fast radio bursts, or FRBs if you're in the astronomy game. These bursts are coming from billions of light years away and might only be space phenomena happening, such as stars merging together, but they might also be extraterrestrial life. Last year, astronomers used a radio telescope to look for more of these flashes, and they found some. So far, they've detected detected about 60 of these FRBs, but 2 of them are of great interest. That's because they're repeating. Maybe one blast alone could just be phenomena in space, but when they repeat, well, that could be something staying out there. There's this guy named Frank Drake, and he's the astronomer that kicked off our first modern type of exploration for extraterrestrial intelligence. You might have heard something about the Drake equation, which estimates how many alien civilizations there are in the Milky Way. That's the galaxy where we live if you're lost. It's Frank's opinion that there's something like 10,000 broadcasting societies in our Milky Way. But the Milky Way is a big place and contains maybe 100 to 300 billion stars. If aliens don't contact us and we have to find them in this great mass of stars, it will take some time. And we're getting there, but 2020 might be optimistic. But 2020 will be a big year, that's for sure. Those looking for alien life are getting some new parts for one of their best telescopes. And if aliens are pointing signals at us from deep space, we now have new technology in the form of something called the Very Energetic Radiation Imaging Telescope Array System. That's a mouthful, so you can call it Veritas. This is about as sophisticated as alien searching tech has ever gotten, and 2020 will be the year it's put to full use. With this thing, astronomers can look for flashes of light, and those flashes might be aliens. Think of it this way: if the most powerful lasers we have on Earth were sent out to a distant star, with Veritas we could detect that laser flash. It's like we're now searching for alien lighthouses. This project set a Russian billionaire back $100 million, but already it's been used to survey 1,000 stars that are all within 160 light years away. We just haven't spotted any signals yet. But this year, astronomers are hoping for something positive to light up their telescope. That would figuratively and literally be a blast for those guys. You might now wonder, so what will we do if we do detect something out there? Well, firstly, scientists have come up with a scale that rates the detection. One of the fast radio bursts it's spotted gets a rating from 0 to 10, with 1 not much to make an astronomer put down his frosty cappuccino, and 10 being something that would make him spill the thing all over himself. A 10 is basically definite alien life that's hovering over Earth looking for a place to park their spaceship. The problem is sometimes the signals that are found could be something generated here on Earth. And as one scientist put it, astronomers might think they've found an alien radio signal when they've actually only discovered a taxi. There's also the fact that what looks like genuine signals from far off in space are not what they seem. In 2015, you might have seen the headlines about an alien megastructure that sat itself in front of something that got named Tabby's star. Its starlight just kept getting dimmer and dimmer, as if something was being constructed in front of it. It was something we'd never seen, and a bunch of scientists started whispering "alien" in the lab canteen. Turns out, after more research, the phenomenon was just the star's light passing through a great big mass of space dust. But what if we are really sure that there was something out there? The problem now is, what do we say to it? This is a conundrum that's driven astronomers and other scientists crazy for a long time. We might be able to send signals out, and they might be able to project signals here, but how would we really communicate? Maybe there's some language of the universe, scientists have said, something that everything or everyone should be able to understand. That's what scientists are looking for, some signal or language that is so complex that it's likely to be from an alien civilization. Then we'd have to decipher it, and we need some kind of Rosetta Stone for the universe. That's the stone that allowed us to understand the Egyptian hieroglyphics. On the other side of the coin, a group of astronomers belonging to something called Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence International are trying to send signals out to space as beams that carry information relating to the periodic table of elements. We haven't heard anything back just yet, and the assumption that aliens will share any of our science is a very big assumption. As some philosophers might tell you, we cannot conceive of something that doesn't exist to us. Aliens might have heads, geometry, egos, something similar to Instagram and the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but they might also be something that right now we cannot possibly imagine. You can't even try and imagine it because your imagination is based on things in this world. This is the astronomer's great problem. When we talk about aliens coming down on spaceships and blowing things up, or them looking down at us and shaking their big heads in disbelief as we ride at Walmart on Black Friday, we're assuming aliens are like us, with human reasoning and feelings. We assume that because if they can travel in space, they must have human-like intelligence, but again, that's a big assumption. Okay, so what if? What if this year we discover a signal and it's been verified as coming from an extraterrestrial life form? Would it be like in the movies and a bunch of guys stand around in the White House with a military man shouting that we should nuke them? Well, there are a bunch of protocols in place for post-detection, but they aren't international law yet. You might say they're more like sound advice. One of them was created by those alien-searching astronomers we've talked about, and it was called the Declaration of Principles for Activities Following the Detection of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Basically, the protocol says scientists must verify the hell out of that signal before it's announced to the governments around the world and the Secretary General of the United Nations. Step 2 2, you, the public, receive that emergency broadcast during Rick and Morty. Next, governments agree if a signal should be sent back, and if they give the green light that the message must adhere to certain principles that cover things like territory, justice, honesty, respect for property, and respect for cultural diversity. Let's say those guys get closer, and to our surprise, they're just as we imagined. That's green guys with slim physiques and giant heads, and they're partial to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. What are the odds of that? Would they destroy us, like something from that movie Mars Attacks? Some futurists think no, because they would likely have gone through all the stages of cultural evolution on their planet if they could develop space travel technology. They would have seen wars and famine and all kinds of bad business and come here merely as very advanced peace-loving friends and advisors. If they did want to destroy us, it would likely be easy given that they could cross the universe. Others disagree, painting the scenario of an explorer civilization that would likely just do as we do and colonize things. They'd take ownership of us and have us working in their sweatshops, making their alien smartphones, just as the now deceased famous physicist Stephen Hawking predicted. Aliens would be hostile nomads in this scenario. In his view, we'd soon be calling ourselves native Earthlings and talking about the damn settlers. We'd also have to do something about immigration, calling some human people aliens, with the upshot of that being that we might start to embrace each other down here. The new threat would be the real aliens. If aliens have traveled this far, they could be part of intergalactic confederations or alliances. That might sound like Star Wars, but why not if they've arrived on Earth already? They might teach us how to travel faster than the speed of light, and one day, we might become part of the alliance. Serious scientists have said this, by the way. It's not just the imagination of an infographic show writer. If they did want to come join us in peace, we'd have to think about the issue of illegal immigration of extraterrestrial people. No kidding, we'd really have to figure that out, and no doubt the public would take to Twitter and passionately disagree with each other. We'd have to consider alien pathogens brought here and dangerous invasive organisms that might have traveled with them. No doubt there'd be real science, but also a lot of disgruntled Earthlings making stuff up about those dirty aliens coming here to take our gerbs and drive up crime rates. It would be a complicated relationship, and can imagine if those aliens started challenging world religions. Hey guys, those gods you've been talking about, well, we have something to tell you about that. Maybe this is all just a matter of time. If you believe in the theory of plentitude, then everything's possible in the universe. As the great Mr. Carl Sagan once said, the origin of life on suitable planets seems built into the chemistry of the universe. One day, our astronomers are going to get that call from outer space, and we are going to stare at our screens with a sense of excitement and dread. The aliens are coming, and things will never be the same again. You might believe we've already seen them, and there's a conspiracy to hide that information, but NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden said when he was doing his snooping on the CIA and NSA databases, he could find no evidence of extraterrestrials. If you believe him, they're not close yet. But that's not to say they might not be well on their way. For centuries, humanity has looked up at the stars and wondered if we're alone in the universe. We've dedicated much time and money trying to determine if anyone else is out there, and recently there's been a lot of excitement in the scientific community over a newly detected object hurtling toward our solar system. For some, this was a chance to prove the possibility of alien life. In the wee hours of the morning of August 30th, 2019, engineer and amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov was scanning the horizon in Naushny, Crimea. Using a telescope with a 650mm aperture of his own design, he spotted an unknown object and posted an animation of it crossing the sky in an online Russian astronomy forum. As word spread, other astronomers around the world began scanning for the object and making their own observations. Then, the Gemini North Observatory atop Mauna Kea in Hawaii, using the Gemini Multi-Object Spectrograph instrument, was able to capture colored detail images of the object on September 9th and 10th. The William Herschel telescope in La Palma, Spain, was also able to take some images of the object. Unfortunately for alien enthusiasts, the object was declared to be a comet. It's been given the name 2I Borisov. Disappointing if you were hoping for little green men flying in a saucer, but a pretty exciting discovery for the scientific community, especially since 2I Borisov is now interstellar. What exactly does that mean? Well, first let's start with what a comet is. Many have referred to comets as dirty or cosmic snowballs. They're balls of frozen gases, rock, and dust that orbit the sun. When a comet's orbit brings it close to the sun, the ice on its surface vaporizes. It spews dust and gases to form a giant glowing head and frequently also produces a tail. Comets vary in size, but typically the nucleus or center of the comet is around 6 miles wide. The width of the coma, or the cloud that forms around the nucleus, changes size depending on how close the comet is to the sun. Scientists have studied comets with comas that are 50,000 miles wide. A comet's tail also varies in length due to how much it's being heated by the sun's radiation. Comet tails range from short to extremely long. The longest comet tail recorded to date was the tail for Comet Hyakutake, with a length of 3.3 astronomical units, or 3.3 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun, some 307 million miles. Two main types of comets orbit in our solar system. Ecliptic or short-period comets are generally defined as those having an orbital period of less than 200 years and follow the ecliptic plane, the same plane in which the planets lie. Ecliptic comets tend to be around 70 astronomical units, or roughly 70 by 93 million miles or less from the Sun. These comets are thought to have been created in the Kuiper Belt, a circumstellar disk composed of gas, dust, planetesimals, and asteroids that orbit around the Sun from beyond Neptune. A well-known ecliptic comet is Halley's Comet, which passes the Earth's vicinity about every 75 years. You or your parents may remember Halley's Comet passing the Earth in 1986, a time when Magnum PI was on American TV and shoulder pads were in style. Wait, was that really 1986 or now? Anyway, the second type of comet are nearly isotropic or long-period comets, which originated in the theoretical Oort cloud, a spherical bubble of icy cosmic debris encasing our solar system. The Oort cloud is considered theoretical because it's at the farthest edge of our solar system and we haven't yet observed it. It's thought to begin some 2,000 to 200,000 astronomical units, or 0.03 to 3.2 light-years away from the Sun. We hypothesize it exists because we've observed some of its effects on the solar system. There are likely billions of comets orbiting our Sun, many from afar in the Oort cloud, but as of July 2018, we're only aware of 6,339 of them. Back to newly discovered comet 2I Borisov. Why 2I Borisov is considered so unique is because it's interstellar, meaning that it originated outside of our solar system. It formed from cosmic material surrounding another star millions, perhaps billions of years ago, and unimaginably far away. Due to some unknown massive cosmic event, the comet is now traveling through our solar system. 2I Borisov has been determined to be interstellar because of its orbit and how fast it's moving. The comet's trajectory is extremely hyperbolic, with a wide arc that approaches from one direction and leaves in another, marking it as an object just passing through. Amazingly, the comet is traveling at a breakneck velocity of 93,000 miles per hour. That's nearly 26 miles per second. Another clue that the comet is from outside our solar system is that it's not gravitationally bound to the Sun. 2I Borisov is only the second object we've ever detected as originating outside of our solar system. The first known interstellar object was Oumuamua, which was first observed on October 19, 2017, by Canadian physicist and astronomer Robert Work using the Pan-STARRS telescope at Haleakala Observatory in Hawaii. Oumuamua means in Hawaiian scout or messenger from our distant past. Unfortunately, Oumuamua was 40 days past its perihelion, or the point that it's as close to the Sun as it was going to get. Also, it was already some 21 million miles or 0.22 AUs from Earth and headed out of our solar system when it was detected, so scientists didn't have much time to study it. Awesomely, we discovered 2I Borisov during its arrival to our solar system, which gives us much more time to observe it. Through mid-November 2019, the comet is observable with some telescopes in the northern hemisphere. It'll cross the celestial equator on November 13th and enter into the southern sky, giving astronomers and enthusiasts in Australia and other southern regions the possibility of viewing it. On December 6th, the comet will be an equal distance of about 2 AUs from the Sun and Earth. Its perihelion is December 8, 2019. While 2I Borisov will peak in brightness in mid-December unless it fades or disintegrates unexpectedly, the comet should be observable with moderate-sized telescopes until April 2020. After that, it'll only be observable with larger professional telescopes through October 2020. Since 2I Borisov began its journey so long ago to arrive in the vicinity of our solar system now, we can only speculate about the system it came from. From its entry into our solar system, the comet originated from the direction of the galactic disk of the Milky Way. Some scientists have proposed that 2I Borisov originated in Kruger 60, a binary star system composed of a pair of red dwarf stars some 13.15 light-years away from Earth. Extrapolating from the comet's orbital parameters determined so far, astronomers at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, Poland, have modeled and rewound 2I Borisov's trajectory through space, accounting for the gravitational influence of 648 star systems it passed. After a series of 10,000 simulations where researchers varied the comet's orbital parameters and Kruger 60's location and velocity, they found about 1 million years ago 2I Borisov passed just 5.7 light-years from the center of Kruger 60, moving fairly slowly, just 2.13 miles per second. Yeah, that's still very, very fast. However, that's a slow enough speed to indicate origination rather than the comet just passing by. However, Kruger 60 results are preliminary and more simulations will be done as researchers continue to gather more data while observing 2I Borisov. So far, 2I Borisov is displaying the characteristics of a regular comet. The debate is currently raging among scientists as to how large the nucleus of the comet is. The present estimate is between 0.8 of a mile to just over 4 miles, with a tail of around 6 miles. This is in contrast to Oumuamua, which seemed more like an asteroid rather than a comet, with its odd oblong shape and unusual orbital characteristics. It lacked a coma and a tail. However, after scientists analyzed data from many different observatories, they realized that Oumuamua underwent non-gravitational acceleration. Something beside the gravity from our solar system affected the trajectory of Oumuamua. Probably the source of this acceleration was jets of gas coming off the object. This behavior is similar to how when near the sun, ice in comets sublimates or turns into a gas without going through a liquid stage. The gas can then push the object along and usually emits large amounts of dust. However, we couldn't see the outgassing for Oumuamua. It's speculated that the comet had used up all of its dust on interstellar travels or had dust particles a size we had trouble detecting. Using telescopes, scientists have measured the light being scattered off the gases in 2I Borisov's nebulous coma. Measuring the light spectrum of 2I Borisov allows us to analyze the chemical composition of the ices in the comet that are undergoing sublimation. Knowing what chemicals are contained within the vapor of this cosmic snowball gives us a glimpse into the ancient building blocks which make up another planetary system. So far, scientists have reported the detection of cyanide in 2I Borisov, which is commonly found in regular comets born in our solar system. Instead of analyzing the light coming off of 2I Borisov, wouldn't it be easier to retrieve a sample from the comet? Scientists would love to collect material from the comet, but it's moving too fast for that. Researchers have studied whether it would be possible to intercept 2I Borisov. While it's feasible, it's pretty unlikely. Assuming that we were ready to launch immediately as of September 2019 using the latest heavy launch technology and calculating the perfect trajectory at a speed of 21.1 miles a second, a very light payload could intercept 2I Borisov in 2045. Meanwhile, the European Space Agency, or ESA, is currently building a robotic spacecraft called the Comet Interceptor, which is planned for launch in 2028. The mission is to park the spacecraft at a Sun-Earth Lagrangian point, or a point where the gravitational forces of large orbiting bodies and the centripetal force of orbital motion match to maintain a position relative to large orbiting bodies, in this case the Sun and the Earth. The Comet Interceptor will be parked at L2, which is about 930,000 miles behind Earth as viewed from the Sun. Once parked, the Comet Interceptor will wait for up to 3 years for a long-period comet to fly by at a reachable distance. If all goes well, the Comet Interceptor will deploy probes to inspect the passing comet, collecting some of the coma and sampling for gas composition, dust flux, density, magnetic fields, as well as plasma and solar wind interactions to build up a 3D profile of the region around the comet. There's a chance that the Comet Interceptor could end up inspecting an interstellar comet. It was just about 2 years between Oumuamua and 2I Borisov visiting our solar system. Scientists speculate that we receive interstellar objects visiting fairly regularly. However, up until now in history, we simply didn't have the technology to discover them, observe them, or realize that they were interstellar travelers. Not only would intercepting and studying an interstellar comet tell us a lot about another planetary system, it could provide us with proof of alien life. An interstellar comet could carry microbial or animal life capable of surviving the harsh conditions of space, traces of the dead remnants of alien life via a chemical or biosignature, or so-called technosignatures or technological artifacts in the comet debris left by aliens. So while 2I Borisov turned out not to be an alien spacecraft, studying the comet may provide us with some clues to help us determine if there is life aside from us in the universe. According to the National UFO Reporting Center, since 2014, there's been quite a drop in the number of people that have reported seeing alien spacecraft. But prior to the 1940s, there's little evidence of people saying they saw unidentified flying objects. Then we got the space race and mind-blowing technologies, and people not only started saying they saw UFOs, but some believed they had been abducted by aliens. This was the dawn of a new era of alien conspiracies, with Roswell perhaps being the best known of them all. When video technology became easily accessible, we also saw many films of strange objects in the sky, and perhaps even the most skeptical amongst us could be swayed toward believing they were watching aliens.
Let's now try to find out what could be hidden from us in this episode of the Infographic Show. Is the US military hiding aliens? We won't spend too much time on Roswell because we've done that already in our show, Evidence That Aliens Did Come to Roswell. But let us recap at least what went down in the small town in New Mexico. If you looked at the Roswell Daily Record on July 8, 1947, you'd have seen a headline that said the Roswell Army Airfield had captured an alien spacecraft. The US government denied that this happened and said that in fact pieces of what looked like to some a UFO was actually a weather balloon. Nonetheless, it was reported by some that the debris consisted of a 700-foot-long string of neoprene balloons, radar reflectors for tracking, and sonic equipment. Was this a cover-up? Well, the USA at the time had been developing advanced military machinery, and there is no doubt at all that many of these developments were top secret. The USA didn't want the Soviet Union knowing what it was working on, so things had to be hush-hush. The weather balloon story just didn't cut it for many, including much of the media. But that didn't mean the USA was hiding aliens. Rather, secret things were happening, and so at times cover-ups took place. You also had respected physicist and ufologist Stanton Terry Friedman saying there was a cover-up, and he really did believe a UFO had landed in Roswell. He said there was something called the Majestic 12, a group of powerful men that knew all about the existence of aliens. He wrote, "The evidence is overwhelming that the Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled vehicles from off of the Earth." The FBI alluded that he was delusional. Maybe you believe that this man and other conspiracy theorists were delusional, but then you might take note that when in 2016 John Podesta wanted to release the Roswell files under the Freedom of Information Act, they were missing. The files had disappeared, but it was clear there'd been some investigation by the Air Force, said Podesta. Sound fishy? Then you have the area in Nevada where the USA develops new technologies, the place known as Area 51. We know black projects happen there, but we don't exactly know what. Again, it's in the interests of a country to keep such things secret, but as long as there is secrecy, there will be paranoia and conspiracies. The alien conspiracy certainly heightened when a man called Bob Lazar appeared on US television in 1989, saying he worked in this area reverse engineering several flying saucers. The question is, was he delusional too? With this in mind, we at least need to investigate further. In 2017, the New York Times reported that the Pentagon was spending $600 billion on defense, but there was a mysterious $22 million spent on the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. That is cash spent on looking for UFOs, and where that money went exactly remains a secret. The Pentagon has admitted that this program existed, but then also said it was closed down in 2012. The shadowy program, parts of it remain classified, began in 2007, and initially it was largely funded at the request of Harry Reid, the Nevada Democrat who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time and who has long had an interest in space phenomena, wrote the Times. The paper added that much of the money in this program came from a billionaire entrepreneur by the name of Robert Bigelow. He has gone on record saying he is absolutely convinced that aliens have been here on Earth. He says the program has indeed included documents that say sightings of UFOs have happened, and those objects moved at very high speeds and showed no signs of propulsion. The program also included information about the mysterious oval object that in 2004 was being chased by two Navy FA-18F fighter jets. Scientists, however, told the Times that one should not rush to the conclusion that every strange moving object is an alien spacecraft. Rather, sometimes natural phenomenon can look like a UFO. We're also told that flying objects might not always want to be seen, and sometimes they are not aliens but flown by humans. In the 1950s and 60s, the USA had something called Project Blue Book. That project told us thousands of objects were seen flying through the sky, but often those were other countries' spy planes, clouds, or just conventional aircraft. We're also told that 701 of these objects, in that project at least, were never properly explained. So we know that the US has a certain amount of black money and that the cash is spent on seeing or understanding alien technology. This is a fact and no one is denying it. Space.com talks about the secret project too, telling us that a man who ran the program for a while went on record saying there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone. This is not some conspiracy theorist. This is a man that worked at the higher echelons of US intelligence. He told CNN that some of the aircraft being studied in the program were displaying characteristics that are not currently within the US inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of. Some reports say when he left his job in 2016, he did so because he was annoyed that the government wasn't taking aliens or the threat of aliens seriously enough. Then we have the Mutual UFO Network, and the people working there believe we are on the brink of something big regarding UFOs. This group of people are at the forefront of UFO research and have studied over 100,000 UFO reports over the last 50 years or so. Their conclusion is without a doubt UFOs have been seen, that the technology is fantastic, and that we can learn a lot from those technologies. Our military vaults are full of such videos and data on these objects. Now that the spill gates have been opened a little, it's time for the rest to come out in an orderly fashion, said the network. But there are still skeptics. One writer told Space.com that while we might come across alien spacecraft, the $22 million the USA spent was not much in the bigger scheme of things. He believes there are a few curious minds in the government, but that's it. Nothing is being hidden from us. All you have are a few UFO believers in and outside the government who were able to get away with funneling a few million Pentagon dollars to themselves for UFO research and have very little to show for it, he said. What we have perhaps as the best case for a UFO is that amazing footage of the US fighter jets following some kind of object. It seems that many experts say that this is some of the most compelling evidence. After that, we have the Times report, which was in some ways groundbreaking because it proved the US government was looking for aliens. The Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program was about the nearest thing we have to the X-Files, or at least is the nearest thing we've been told about. What do the Brits think about this? In 2017, The Guardian reported the same story as everyone else, that the US was looking for aliens and wasn't denying it. But the British government in 2010 also released its own UFO report. We're told that this consisted of around 6,000 pages of documentation, but nothing in there proved the existence of UFOs. British UFO expert Nick Pope read all these documents and said there's a great deal of mundane correspondence between the MOD and the public, together with the vast number of UFO sightings which are clearly aircraft lights, satellites, or meteors. But there is some more interesting material. Indeed, some of the events he mentioned have remained something of a mystery. He said that it's now time that everyone realized that both the UK and US governments are taking aliens seriously, maybe more seriously than ever. Like our US colleagues, we too denied, even to Parliament, that we were undertaking secret studies into the UFO phenomenon and consistently downplayed the true extent of our interest and activity at the Ministry of Defense, he said. That said, the British MOD closed down its UFO hotline in 2009, stating that no sighting over the years had led to anything substantial. The American Department of Defense said it closed its program to use the funding for other projects. It did say this, though, to the media in 2017. The DoD takes seriously all threats and potential threats to our people, our assets, and our mission, and takes action whenever credible information is developed. Unfortunately, boys and girls and alien enthusiasts, besides the USA admitting that there is black money and black sites, we don't have much to go on. We have some interesting videos, and we have very few supposed whistleblowers who might also be crackpots. We had a cover-up in Roswell, but it wasn't a cover-up of alien existence. It was just more secrecy from an already paranoid government. What we at the Infographics Show think is that the US government isn't necessarily hiding information pertaining to the existence of UFOs, but it does work under the veil of secrecy. That's it. That's all, folks. There's no big conspiracy to keep us unaware of the truth.
October 19, 2017 was a day like any other, until it wasn't. High on a mountaintop, Hawaii's Pan-STARRS-1 telescope scanned the skies, searching the solar system for a deadly threat to life on Earth. As part of NASA's Near-Earth Object Observations program, the telescope was updating its catalog of near-Earth asteroids and comets, which could pose a threat should one impact us. However, Pan-STARRS-1 discovered something much more than a dangerous asteroid, and according to a growing community of academics, it may have discovered the first verified proof of intelligent alien life. Whizzing by at a breakneck speed of 196,000 miles an hour, Oumuamua's highly elliptical orbit immediately told astronomers they weren't looking at an ordinary comet or asteroid. This was the first confirmed visitor from outside our solar system. As telescopes of all kind pointed at our interstellar visitor, though, the data only became weirder. Radar showed us that Oumuamua was a very strange object indeed. Up to a quarter-mile long, Oumuamua is 10 times longer than wide, resembling the classic UFO cigar shape, often claimed by witnesses, only on a much more massive scale. To date, no similar natural object has ever been witnessed in space around the Earth, neither comet nor asteroid. As Oumuamua, which in Hawaiian means the scout, sped out of our solar system, however, scientists spotted it doing something no natural object should be doing: accelerating. Any object falling toward the sun is expected to accelerate as the sun's gravity pulls on it. But as Oumuamua swung past the sun, and was on its way out of the solar system, scientists spotted it moving in a way that wouldn't be expected from gravity alone. Scientists were quick to hypothesize that if Oumuamua was indeed a remnant of a comet, it could simply be outgassing as the sun's rays heat up its body. Outgassing is the result of a cometary body warming up in the sun, leading to the release of gas. The escaping gases and debris acts much in the same way a rocket engine does, albeit on a smaller scale. It was a simple and very routine solution to the Oumuamua mystery, except it didn't fit because, try as they might, scientists could find no evidence of outgassing. A new theory was proposed. Oumuamua was simply venting solid hydrogen, invisible to us, but that theory was quickly rebutted as becoming completely impractical in the real world. Theory came and theory went, but none could offer a widely accepted answer for Oumuamua's acceleration, except for one. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb looked at the data and proposed a stunning solution. Oumuamua was an alien ship being propelled by solar sails. The acceleration witnessed by Oumuamua was very slight, but exactly the type of acceleration we'd expect from a very large ship using a massive solar sail. The type of interstellar propulsion method uses extremely thin sheets of material, set either to the front or sides of a spacecraft. The sails work exactly the same way wind sails do here on Earth, only with solar radiation rather than wind. While minuscule, the impact of photons on a solar sail imparts a tiny bit of momentum, which over long spans of time can accelerate a ship to a very respectable fraction of the speed of light. The best part is that unlike regular rockets, you don't have to carry the weight of fuel with you, and as long as you can dip near a star, you'll never run out of fuel. Solar sails aren't the fastest means of interstellar propulsion humanity has theorized, but they are extremely efficient. It'll take Oumuamua about 11,000 years to travel 1 light-year as it speeds away from us and toward the Pegasus constellation, and while that sounds like a very long time, the truth is that for an intergalactic civilization, those sorts of timescales are irrelevant. While not likely a research ship of any kind, as manned ships would want to move faster than Oumuamua, it could have very well been an automated cargo craft dipping into our solar system for a speed boost as it slingshotted past our sun. There is one problem with this though, and that's the fact that Oumuamua was believed to be tumbling on more than one axis, which wouldn't make much sense for a functional alien ship. However, a derelict or destroyed ship, or perhaps simply a piece of massive alien debris, could easily be spinning on multiple axes the way Oumuamua was. We may possibly have just witnessed the alien equivalent of the Titanic zipping past our solar system, with its deployed solar sail still propelling it on a never-ending journey through the galaxy. The alien theory seems out there, but the shape of Oumuamua itself does lend for some credibility. It just so happens that Oumuamua is not only an extremely unusual shape for a natural comet or asteroid, in fact none like it have ever been observed, but that its skinny, elongated body is perfect for traveling through the cosmos at high speeds. When you're moving at a fraction of the speed of light, even as our own technology today would allow us to accomplish on long interstellar voyages, running into a speck of dust would release energy equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. The best way to avoid strikes like this is to create the main body of your ship, where your inhabitants and equipment is stored, skinny and very long, reducing the forward-facing profile of the ship. You would then protect the ship with an extremely hard nose cone, which would ablate away as you travel through space. Other observations, however, reveal that Oumuamua may have instead been shaped like a very large, very flat pancake, which makes the case for a light sail even stronger. The shape is certainly well outside the bounds of nature, though sadly Oumuamua's tumbling an extreme distance from Earth made it difficult to get accurate data. What's even more curious is that Oumuamua seemed to pass through the Goldilocks zone of the Sun, or the area where liquid water and thus life is possible. At its closest, Oumuamua came within 15 million miles of Earth, or about 63 times the distance of Earth to the Moon. In astronomical terms, this is basically invading the Earth's personal space. Mars, our closest neighbor, is over twice that distance, 33.9 million miles at its closest to us. As if Oumuamua wasn't strange enough already, observations show that Oumuamua was likely at rest compared to other stars around us, if speed kept it in the same relative position to stars around it. Rather than Oumuamua visiting us, the solar system itself crashed into it as we orbit the massive black hole at the center of our galaxy. This type of celestial motion is extremely rare in nature, but once more the alien object theory fills in some holes that traditional theories don't. The solar system orbits around the galaxy in roughly 230 million years. An alien civilization using the very same spectroscopy techniques we use to analyze faraway planets would have been able to detect unnatural levels of oxygen in our atmosphere as much as 2.23 billion years ago. concentrations so high that they could have only come from life continuously replenishing oxygen in the atmosphere. Rather than send a probe to us directly, aliens could have simply left one in our path for us to run into eventually, especially if they wanted to gather information about us in a stealthy manner, without giving away obvious signs of this probe having working technology aboard. Or Oumuamua may simply be one of millions of similar probes scattered across the galaxy, collecting data automatically as solar systems run into them and send it back home. All of this would be an incredibly lengthy process requiring timescales on the millions of years. Yet again, for an advanced enough civilization, these timescales mean nothing. When your technology has progressed far enough that you've survived your first million years, the rest are completely inconsequential. Most scientists still believe Oumuamua was natural and very publicly oppose any claim that Oumuamua was alien in origin. However, the data does indicate that whatever Oumuamua was, it was without a doubt the most unusual object humanity has ever seen and could have been the first proof of intelligent life from beyond Earth. Or maybe that's just what the government is paying us to tell you. Just kidding. Though that is what we would say if we were secretly run by the government, isn't it? It's 2004, and off the coast of California, a squadron of F-14 fighters are on a routine exercise when suddenly they're called on to check out a mysterious radar contact. Minutes later, the F-14s are in hot pursuit of something seemingly otherworldly. 2013, and the world is shocked when a high-speed UFO flies just over the treetop height of the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The object zooms across the small airport, delaying the takeoff of a commercial flight. In the air, a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft captures the incredible incident with its powerful infrared camera. 2015, and once more, an unidentified flying object is intercepted by U.S. fighters, the entire incident captured on their highly sensitive AT-FLIR pods. Someone, or something, seems to be visiting the Earth, and with alarming regularity. The real question is, what do they want, and what's it like to be abducted by beings from another planet? Given the increasing odds that you might find yourself one day the guest of extraterrestrial entities, this video may be the most important video you ever watch. Stay tuned and learn what it's like to be abducted by aliens, with scenarios drawn from the most convincing cases of alien abduction to date. It's late at night and you're driving home after an impromptu road trip. You've only got a few hours left to go, but the lack of other traffic on the mostly empty backcountry road leaves you feeling a bit unsettled. Then suddenly up in the night sky you spot something. It looks like a falling star, gradually growing closer. You can't believe your luck. Maybe this meteorite will actually land somewhere near you. But then the bright object in the sky does something decidedly unfalling star-like. It changes direction. It seems to stop its fall just short of the ground and shoots out ahead of you, hovering somewhere past the bend in the road you're headed for. You can't help but feel a rush of excitement as you approach the bend. You know you should be feeling scared, but you're caught up in the moment. As you clear the bend, you see it, a large object giving off several hues of light, hovering just off the shoulder of the road. In awe, you can't help yourself, and you stop your vehicle. As you climb out of the car and slowly approach the glowing object, you cannot believe the size of it. It's easily as big as an airplane, but shaped like a disc and surprisingly flat. As the lights shift and dim slightly though, you're starting to realize you can see windows set into the strange craft, and looking out of those windows and directly at you are beings of some kind. You panic. Seeing a UFO is one thing, but real flesh and blood aliens is something else entirely. You reach for a pistol that you grabbed from the glove compartment of your car, suddenly afraid for your life, but for some reason you can't quite command your hand to actually grab the weapon. You decide to run for it, rushing back into your car and kicking it into gear, barreling down the road. The craft seems to follow your vehicle though, and suddenly there's a series of loud rhythmic beeps that seem to be coming from somewhere inside your vehicle. You feel sleepy. Your perception of time changes. You don't know why or how, but you've pulled the car over to the side of the road. You no longer feel afraid, just confused. Moments later, you feel a presence outside your car door and turn to look into the face of a being from another world. It's short, maybe just barely 5 feet tall, and with light grayish skin. It has large eyes which seem to wrap slightly around the side of its head, and its nose seems to be sunken into its head. The creature has no body hair that you can see, though appears to be wearing a one-piece uniform of some sort. The being beckons you out of the car and you find yourself obeying. You don't feel fear, just a general sense of confusion, but you find that you want to do as the strange being asks of you. Helping you in your dazed state, the being walks you up a ramp and inside of the now landed spacecraft. Once inside, you're taken to an examination room with curved walls and a single large light hanging from the ceiling. The being asks you to climb up onto a metal table, but it's so short that your legs hang over the side of it. Clearly, it's meant to examine creatures of a similar stature to your alien abductors. Carefully, your clothes are removed, though your pants are torn slightly in the process. This will prove vital to convincing yourself later, after the memory of this event is clouded, that something really did happen to you this night. You're naked now as several of the beings begin their work on you, though again you feel no fear or shame, just general confusion as if you're under the effects of mild anesthesia. The aliens take clippings from your hair, your nails, and DNA samples by scraping your skin and the inside of your mouth. Needles connected to very long wires and leading to some unfathomable piece of machinery are inserted into your body at various places: your head, arms, legs, and spine. One needle, larger than the rest, is inserted into your stomach, but causes an extreme amount of pain. After screaming out, the aliens quickly remove the needle and cancel the test. The aliens probe your mouth. They're shocked to discover that some of your teeth can be removed. You're wearing false teeth, and the aliens are astonished at the discovery, though they quickly replace them. This entire time, one of the aliens whom you've taken to calling the leader has been watching, occasionally reassuring you that everything will be fine. Once the examination is complete, the other beings shuffle out of the room, leaving you alone with the leader. You ask him where he's from, but the alien seems to find this humorous and informs you that if you don't know how to locate Earth in the galaxy, there'd be no point in telling you where he's from. Eventually, though, he shows you what seems to be a map of the stars and points out his home star. Years later, under regressive hypnosis, you'll draw that map from memory and be astonished to discover it's a real constellation. The next thing you know, you're back inside your car with no memory of the experience. It'll take you years to piece together this suppressed memory and even longer to make peace with your terrifying experience. That previous scenario comes from what might be the most famous alien abduction encounter ever, that of Barney and Betty Hill, a mixed-race couple living in the 1960s. The encounter made international headlines, and Betty remained adamant about her experience until the day she died in the early 2000s. The story has drawn plenty of controversy and skepticism, but what about when an alien abduction has audio proof that it might have been real? It's fall, and you and a friend decide to blow off some steam by doing some night fishing. You head over to an old abandoned shipyard where you can fish straight from one of the piers just as the sun is starting to set. Shortly after sunset, though, you spot a blue light reflecting off the water coming in your direction, and you and your buddy assume it's a police boat coming to tell you to leave the property. As the lights draw nearer, though, you realize it's no police boat. In fact, the source of the light isn't on the water, it's above it. A giant light suddenly breaks through the low clouds, and as your eyes adjust to the brightness, you see a football-shaped craft hovering above you. The strange craft seems to emit a low hissing noise, but your attention is immediately focused on what will appear to be three creatures floating down from the craft toward you. The creatures move robotically as they approach you, and seem to be just over 6 feet tall and very bulky. Most striking of all, though, is their pincer-like hands, which don't have human-like fingers at all. Paralyzed with fear, one of the creatures puts its claw-like hand on your arm, and suddenly you feel the fear drain away and calm settle over you. The three robotic-like figures then float you and your friend up to the UFO and lead you into a large examination room of some kind with bright white lights and curved walls. By now, you're fully paralyzed and unable to move, though still feeling that strange calm feeling as if you've been sedated. A small device the size of a deck of playing cards comes zooming down toward you and starts scanning your body, whipping back and forth over and around you. Finally, you spot a new figure approaching you. This one seems to be just a little shorter than the robot-like aliens and appears to be feminine to you. Unlike the aliens that brought you on board, this one seems to be made of flesh and blood, with large dark eyes and no eyelids, and a small slit of a mouth. This new alien has regular hands, although the fingers are unnaturally long. She prods into your mouth with one of her fingers, reaching all the way down to the back of your throat. You gag and choke, and the alien removes her finger, telling you not to worry, you won't be hurt. After the choking incident, the examination seems to be more benign, though your memories grow fuzzy on the details. At last, you're led back down to the riverbank you were picked up from by the robot-like aliens, and the craft in the sky zooms away. The preceding incident was as reported by Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson back in the 1970s and immediately drew national attention. The two called their local sheriff immediately after the incident, admitting they'd probably be looked at as being crazy. With no other options though, the two agreed to immediately meet with Sheriff Fred Diamond and Glenn Ryder. Unbeknownst to the two alien abductees, however, one of the sheriffs decided to secretly hide a tape recorder in the interrogation room that the two were kept at, confident that when left alone they'd talk about the hoax. Instead, the sheriff found unsettling proof that their tale may be more truth than fiction. While the two would pass numerous polygraphs attesting to their story, the secret recording lends great credibility to the event. In the recording, the two men are obviously terrified and badly shaken, with one of them saying he needed something to calm him down before he could get to sleep that night. Don't take our word for it though, listen for yourself.
Had a heart attack now, I come one down and two down. Scared me to death too, so Jesus Christ. What's so damn bad about there's nobody to play with? That's what I thought I had been through enough of hell on this earth, and now I gotta go through something like this.
So were these two men really abducted by aliens from another world, or did they stick to their hoax despite being left alone in an interrogation room and not knowing they were being recorded? Perhaps we'll never know, but given how stories of alien abduction are on the rise, maybe tonight you'll be the next Earthling to meet alien visitors in the most terrifying way. Don't say we didn't warn you. Now watch evidence that aliens have made contact, or click this other video instead. And when you get abducted, tell your new alien friends to subscribe to your favorite YouTube channel.